Benjamin Solak. Your timing is good, my friend, from ESPN. It's great to meet you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Zagura over there. Good to see
What's
you,
going
man.
on? Good to see you again.
We were just talking about, we were talking about some of the comments Todd Monken made at open competition and all of that, Deshaun and Shador and all of that, and then kind of dovetail into a conversation about the quarterbacks on NFL rosters who could become available. We know the ones that aren't. I mean, Malik's going to be at the top of that, but how do the Arizona Cardinals eradicate themselves from Kyler? What does that look like? What happens in Miami with Tua? What do you sense as we are here at Combine Week, how these things are going to kind of shake out?
I think both are going to end up being released, which Kyler's cap hit is pretty big, but I think he's going to end up being released. Tua's cap hit is enormous. It'll be the biggest dead cap hit over multiple years that we've seen taken in the NFL. But I just don't think that they're going to see enough trade interest to warrant moving the guys in that perspective, right? Because one of the things we have to remember is that I'm the Cardinals general manager. I come to ownership and I say, hey, we've got an offer, Kyler on the table. We have to eat some of his salary, but we get a 6th-round pick. Even if that's good business, the owner doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to draft the guy first overall. This guy's not going to do a big deal than trading for a 6th-round pick. They'd rather just cut him, right? There's less egg on your face in that way than if you go and you get the day 3 pick while you're also taking on $30 million more in salary. And so we'll see. My expectations is they're both cut. When they get released, because of the way the contract structure works, you can then sign them on minimum style deals, and the Cardinals and the Dolphins end up paying out their salary instead out of that dead cap, and so they become guys who can kind of pick their spots, right? It's less of like a bidding war like it might be with Malik Willis, and more of a situational, where do they want to end up, and what's the best environment for them. And that's where I think the Browns have, a challenge relative to some of these other teams, right? Where I think, the Steelers get to point to a DK Metcalf and to their offensive line, and the Vikings get to point to their offensive line and Justin Jefferson and say, look at our environment, we can develop a quarterback here. And then the Browns are going to have, potentially 5 new starters on the offensive line. And that's a harder sell for saying, hey, you're going to be able to rehabilitate your career here because the offensive nucleus isn't nearly as well known. So that's the challenge for Cleveland.
Is Kyler regarded as Malik Willis is the top free agent, obviously.
Yep.
Are those two kind of the two that really you feel like could move the needle if you got them and got the best out of them?
Yeah, I would put Kyler comfortably above that with Malik, just because Malik, man, it's looked good when it's looked good. He's started 6 games in 4 years, right? I mean, we have to emphasize here, this is an extremely low number of starts, a small sample we have to evaluate. If you go and you look at the history of guys who were drafted, first 3 rounds, started fewer than 10 games, but then signed a big second contract, there's not a lot of guys, and it's not a good history. It's Kevin Cobb with the Cardinals. That contract lasted like 2 years. Brock Osweiler with the Texans. Browns fans know all about how that contract went, right? And then it's Jimmy Garoppolo, who critically got traded to the 49ers and then played a few games and then signed his deal. So they at least had seen him in the offense. But even then, they made him the highest paid quarterback in football. And I think that while they obviously got to attend a Super Bowl, still we all kind of knew the score on Jimmy, what he was for that offense. And so Malik, with this few starts, you are really in uncharted waters. I think Kyler, who, this is the lowest Kyler's stock has been, the Cardinals are moving on, but still, Kyler's a player who can be impactful outside of structure. We've seen him work really well in structure for some of these spread and collegiate-style offenses under Cliff Kingsbury, which we know Todd Monken's got some college background to him, and can he do some of that RPO stuff? He coached for Lamar, so there's some similar quarterback run stuff there. Kyler, to me, we're all, this is the lowest his stock has been, but we are all underappreciating that he can be like an impactful player.
No
he can
doubt.
Be a player.
Yes.
Sure. Relative to
No
he gets lumped in with Tua and Malik, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there's this guy, and then there's the next tier, which is those guys.
It wasn't that long ago. He was number 1 overall. So then for him, what do you think that market looks like once there is a release? What are the
what would you be earmarked
your
for him?
pecking order there?
So my guess is going to be that he wants to end up in Minnesota because everybody wants to end up in Minnesota, right? I would say the prevailing thought in the league is that Kevin O'Connell is an excellent quarterback developer, that they've done the right stuff to develop a quarterback, and they just had the wrong dude in the building, right, with JJ. And obviously he had the injuries, and there was a lot that went down that way, and obviously Minnesota's had a very odd fallout in terms of their front office. But in general, I would say that the prevailing thought in the league is Minnesota's the spot to be for quarterback development. So to me, that's where Kyler will want to end up. Does O'Connell want a sub-6-foot quarterback who isn't necessarily a pocket passer relative to how he's been successful in his career? He had Kirk and he had Sam. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that Kyler is the sort of disposition and play style that he's going to like. So then you go to Pittsburgh, and you have to ask the same question about Mike McCarthy, who coached for Aaron Rodgers and Dak, and they haven't worked as much with these mobile quarterbacks before. And so I think Kyler's list will start with those 2 spots, because I think those are the best environments for quarterback development for the teams that we expect to really need quarterbacks. After that, now it becomes when I go to Cleveland, am I guaranteed to have the job? Versus if I end up in Miami, am I guaranteed to have the job over Quinn Ewers, right? These guys are trying to rehabilitate their careers, likely on, he's likely to be on a 1-year deal, trying to then, get a Sam Darnold payday, get a Daniel Jones payday off one good season. And so you have to know you're going to walk in and have 17 games. And again, that's going to be a challenge for Cleveland with their quarterback room loaded with guys who have played, who have had investment from the front office at some point before, to some of these other teams that might just be clean slating and just giving Kyler, full reign over one season.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating because if you're a team that is looking for a quarterback, obviously for the Browns, you talked about Deshaun and Shador and Dylan Gabriel, you'd need somebody to really take a leap in-house based on what you've seen in the past. But it's really a one quarterback draft. Now, some people are liking Ty Simpson, but Mendoza's going to go one. There really aren't a whole lot of options for teams that are looking for that guy. Now, maybe somebody, I think it would take at least a 2 to get Mac Jones for the Niners to even entertain the notion. And
I agree.
You saw him with Kyle, and Kyle's been a good rehabilitator, and also people play really well with Kyle. And Kyle's a factor in that. You don't get to bring Kyle with Mac Jones. So it really is an interesting year in how teams are going to kind of approach this. And then you have guys out there like, Geno Smith will be, I would guess, available. Kirk Cousins, who actually played pretty well at the end of last year, available. Atlanta, to me, is an interesting one because I don't think that you're saying, okay, we're just handing the keys over to Michael Penix. Bijan.
Stefanski has very emphatically, when given the opportunity, be like, Michael Penix is our guy, has not done so. And he's not doing it in a way of like, this is an open competition, come play quarterback. But they've given him a chance to be like, hey, Michael Penix moving forward, and he is sidestepping it, which to me pretty clearly they want to add somebody else to the room.
Could that be an interesting spot for Kyler?
Yeah. That's actually, because of what he did with Baker, and there's some stylistic similarities there. That's one I hadn't thought of before, but actually I like that idea a lot. I'm going to ask some people about that. But yeah, no, I very much, the tree you're barking up right now, which is, hey, after Mendoza, there's very little guys in the draft. Who can we go and get kind of in the veteran market, but then also in the trade market? That, to me, is the big question right now, because there's a lot of guys who are quarterback twos on their teams right now who have had opportunities, or they're young guys, they're still cost controlled, who just for whatever reason, Anthony Richardson lost the job to Daniel Jones, but this is still, high physical tools. He was an inexperienced player. Guys want to develop him. Spencer Rattler had a nice September and October with the Saints. He improved year 1 to year 2. It's just that new coaching staff had invested in Tyler Shuck. He was their guy, and they put him in there when he was ready. Tanner McKee's looked good with the Eagles. Will Levis with the Titans. Even if Levis at the Titans, his film, his starts, they were not that great. They were whatever. But teams are going to look at their pre-draft grade on Will Levis, and then they're going to look at their draft grades that they have on Garrett Nussmeier and Carson Beck and some of these quarterback 3s and quarterback 4s in this draft. They're going to say, man, we liked Levis better 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Why would we spend a 4th-round pick on this guy? We go trade the 4th-round pick to the Titans, get him, and you don't have as many years of team control, but you had a higher grade on that player. And that's really the caliber of quarterback class we're dealing with right now. We're quarterback 3, quarterback 4, 5 in this group are really, really low on teams' boards. And so that's going to invite, I think, some trades for some younger players over the course of the league, some dart throws, and some guys who are QB2 right now.
Well, it also, we just watched Darnold, so everyone's going to want, can we pull a Darnold?
Yeah.
Can we, so it's copycat league, so everyone's trying for that.
Yep.
When you think of the wide receiver position in this draft, and we've had kind of varying views, we've talked to a lot of people already about, what's just your take on the wide receivers in the draft?
Yeah, when I remember it was the Drake London class, so that would have been 2020 or something like that, 2021. I wrote a piece that was, there's never going to be a bad wide receiver class ever again. And I still feel that way for the rest of time. We've gotten so good at developing these receivers, right? Because 20 years ago, college programs could not throw the football. But there were no college quarterbacks. They couldn't. It was all running games, all QB run. And then RPOs and 7-on-7 football really helped develop quarterbacks and receivers. And now every team, you go to Coastal Carolina, you find 2 draftable receivers. There's just guys on guys on guys in different body types, right? We have 5'10", $170 receivers now running around. Zach Branch for Georgia scoring touchdowns. This guy's my size. We've expanded how many receivers really work at the college level and so the NFL level. And so this wide receiver class to me is a below average group relative to past receiver classes. I think if you put the top of this class up against 2024 with Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze and Marvin Harrison, I think all of these guys get drafted after those guys. But I don't think there's such thing as a bad wide receiver class anymore. Excuse me. There's always going to be a couple speed threats. There's always going to be some size guys who win down the field. There's always going to be some slot options. We've just gotten too good at throwing the football to look at a class and be like, oh, there's nobody in this class. Running back this year, very thin class, not a great class. Tight end this year, not a great class. Wide receiver, there's still 15, 20 dudes who can impact the NFL level. We have too many bodies for there to be a wide receiver class that's objectively bad ever again.
Yeah, and the thing that's tricky with that is you're sitting there at 6, and the one thing that we've got a consensus on here in 2 days is no one is trading out of 27.
Yeah.
No one's giving up a 27-1. That ain't happening.
Yep.
So it feels like that there's not going to be a lot of movement maybe in this first round because of that. And so you're sitting there at 6, and maybe it's a blow, but if Carnell Tate, or I don't know who you have as your favorite, but if that guy's there and you're the Browns and you desperately need weaponry, this is the question about team building that Andrew Berry's going to have to answer.
Yep, and I think that you have heard from a lot of like analysts like me say, oh, you can build your wide receiver room in the middle rounds of the draft and get different body types and whatever. But I think Browns fans would be very realistically like, okay, we've heard that for like 6 years, and we'd really like to just have like one guy who's very good at all 3 levels, who's a wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
And so it's an understandable feeling to say, let's just go get Carnell Tate and solve the problem. Tate is my number 1. I think that he's an excellent wide receiver. I think he's going to be a great pro. He was wide receiver 2 for Ohio State behind Jeremiah Smith. Like, he's a very solid wide receiver prospect. He's a great wide receiver prospect. But this is not a, slam the brakes, halt the team building. We need to go get this individual sort of a player to me. And so if he's on the board and Caleb Downs on the board, it's not a thought to me. I'm going to get Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is a blue chip player for me, and Carnell Tate isn't. But you're at a point where, like, in the modern NFL, if you're going to develop a quarterback, you need to have a guy who can catch the football, and then you need to have another one, and then you need to have another one.
Right,
This is how we need to be able to spread the football out. And so you have your Harold Fannin Jr. so freaking good, and you have your, Jerry Jeudy who can play a role for you. You do need another player at wide receiver for the Browns who can be a three-down player, right? Like, you'd love for Sed Tillman to have taken that step. You didn't necessarily see it. Like, you got to get this guy. And so if they invest that way at 6, I'll say, oh, man, I wish they would have taken Downs or Sonny Styles or some of these other blue-chip guys. But I'll understand it. I understand it for sure.
Yeah, we need Isaiah Bond to pop, too, because he's got some speed. He's got some juice to him. That could be in 11, all of a sudden you're saying Tate, Jeudy, Bond, Fannin, Judkins. Like, oh, okay, that's somewhat interesting. What about the trade market there? Because I thought it was very interesting Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia side, they said, no, A.J. Brown's not a guarantee A.J. Brown's going to be an Eagle this year. So that perks my ears up. DJ Moore is somebody that we've heard whispers around, maybe coming out of Chicago. How do you see that receiver trade market? Because those guys are more proven and have produced at a higher level in the NFL than maybe you project some of these guys in this class.
Yeah. A.J. still is so good, right?
I agree.
And I think that a lot of A.J.'s bad film this year is the case of some disinterest and some frustration and some, personal choices as opposed to, athletic fall off. I do think he's beyond his prime a little bit, but still, 220 pounds is 220 pounds. It's, he's hard to tackle. He's hard to bring down. And so A.J., I would expect, if he lands on a new team, is going to be very motivated to make a point about the fact that he's still one of the league's best. And I think you're going to get a couple good years of really good A.J. Brown. I think that's still in him. My guess is the Eagles are going to have to trade him because he is going to cause a stink until he is traded. And the way that contract is structured, it's going to cost a lot for them to trade him. They don't want to do it. He's still a very talented player, but I think they're going to, it's coming to brass tacks, and they're going to have to do it. That trade, though, because the way that deal is built, does not happen until July, August, right? Because of when
has to be post June 1st.
Yeah, and when Roseman has these automatic kickers in for the restructure they all happen in like August, right after 53 cut downs before the regular season starts. So they're going to take this thing all the way to the margin, which means that if you want A.J. Brown, you have to go through the free agency and go through the draft thinking to yourself, all right, we're going to go get A.J., and what are you going to do? Just not build a receiver room? Like, and walk into August with no major needs? So that's the tricky thing, is that because that trade's not going to get done until actually, like, in the summer, if not later, then you do have to have a plan B in place where this is going to be my wide receiver if I can't get A.J., and then I'm going to go try to get A.J. But I think it would be a good move for the Browns if they did.
Benjamin, great talking to you, man.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you so much for the time. That was great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, fella.